Hello, everyone. Nice to see you for the third time of the lecture series provided by Professor Sandor Goodhart, who came from the United States of America, Purdue University. And my name is Vidas Urbanas. I am a professor at the Department of Bioethics. Also, I'm leading the Department of Bioethics, and I'm very proud to introduce this very interesting initiative regarding Emmanuel Levinas, literature and medical humanities. And this is the third lecture of the three-week series. There is a total of 6 lectures, and now we are reaching the median of this cycle. And so I'm very proud to introduce Professor Sandor Goodhart. Professor Sandor Goodhart is a recognized expert in Levinasian philosophy, also Professor Emeritus of English and Jewish Studies at Purdue University, the USA. Also, Sandor was the former director of Religious Studies Program, Jewish Studies Program, Philosophy and Literature Program, Classical Study Program. Also, he's the author of and editor of 7 books on literature, philosophy, and Jewish studies. He is a founding board member of the North American Levinas Society. And Professor Sandor has been collaborating with us, with LSMO, for a couple of years by giving several talks. And now we are very excited to see Professor for this, let's say, long-term event. Also, we want to thank to the Baltic American Freedom Foundation for funding the professor's visit to LSMO and for such a great opportunity to hear authentic talks. The session is recorded and will be available on YouTube in the future if the quality appears to be good enough. So we are testing the quality as well. So as I mentioned, today is the third lecture out of 6. And so, dear Professor, floor is yours.
Thank you, Vidas. I'm delighted to be here and to have this opportunity, which as we have said in the 2 previous weeks, is an experiment. And we're trying things out. Something will work, some things will not work, but we will see and hopefully continue to produce this lecture series, this set of webinars, this set of public seminars on these 6 topics on Levinas, Sophocles, Euripides, Othello, Shakespeare's Othello, Dostoevsky's Dream of a Ridiculous Man, and then a workshop on medical ethics. And I want to just mention, this is a really, I think you're going to have access to seeing this. I believe we're going to put this in the chat if I'm not mistaken. This is the essay. It's available it's open access. You can access it directly on the computer by Lazar Benarroyo. And the title is Significance of Emmanuel Levinas's Ethics of Responsibility for Medical Judgment. It couldn't be more perfect for the topic that we're exploring here. What the only difference is that I'm doing it in this context through literature, and Arroyo is looking at exactly the clinical context. So this will be really the basis on for our discussion on next Thursday, not this Thursday, but a week from Thursday. This Thursday we're doing Othello. Next Tuesday we'll do Dostoevsky's Dream of a Ridiculous Man, which is also available in open access online in the Constance Garnett translation. And then on next Thursday we'll do the workshop. By the way, the translation today is the William Arrowsmith translation. Is also open access available. There's a working script online, and there's also a published script that's available online. So these are very accessible materials that are available to you, and we're going to use the opportunity of their availability to look at the play as if we were all in the same room, looking at a kind of a text here. So I want to begin by just reiterating what my thesis has been throughout, which is that what we're observing here as a way of getting at medical ethics and Levinas's approach to responsibility as a way of doing medical ethics. What we're getting at is a history of literature in the way that literature has dealt with what I'm calling the failure of sacrifice, the failure of sacrificial organization, and the substitution of responsibility, personal responsibility, in the place of that failed sacrifice. And so we looked at it in terms of, we looked at responsibility in terms of Levinas's philosophy in the first lecture. Second lecture, we looked at the ways in which Sophocles in the ancient world deals with what we could call the sacrificial crisis, the breakdown of the sacrificial order, and the chorus of Theban elders who want to find a paradigm, a paradigmata is their interest in finding, in effect, a scapegoat. And Oedipus, even though there's no evidence, and I tried to show last time that there's no evidence for determining absolutely that Oedipus killed Laius, the evidence is equivocal, and yet he appropriates that evidence as if it's accurate, and then he declares himself to be guilty of parricide and incest. And the chorus is willing to go along with this because it will serve a sacrificial function. But the fact that Sophocles has shown this means that sacrifice is not working entirely, that to some extent sacrifice has become literary, if you like, as ritual has become mythic to some extent. And we're going to go on with that thesis today in looking at Euripides. But Euripides presents a new feature of the Greek theater of Dionysus, because Euripides contrasts with Sophocles in the way in which he presents his materials. You know, there's a way in which you can contrast Sophocles with Euripides the way you would contrast, say, Arthur Miller and Samuel Beckett. There's a wonderful book that I constantly refer to by J.O. Austin called How to Do Things with Words, that I think is a really terrific explanation of what became known later on in the United States as speech act theory. And there's a number of practitioners. Jacques Derrida got involved as well in engaging with the whole question of speech act theory. That, you know, some people agree with it, some people have some questions about it, but the fundamental distinction is that Austin begins with the difference between descriptives and performatives. There are sentences like "the boy is walking down the street," which could count as a descriptive, and there are sentences like "I promise to pay you $10," or "I fine you 6 months in jail," which could be talked about as a performative. The actual saying of it in a certain context constitutes the doing of it. Right, but then Austin makes the point later in the book that in fact there are only performatives, and that in fact descriptives are simply those versions of performatives that are showing how you get along without recognizing performativity. And so what a descriptive is doing is the action or the doing of exemplification, the exemplification of the distinction between descriptives and performatives. Well, it seems to me that this way of talking about these two modalities of theater have been useful for scholars to think about Sophocles and Euripides. That Sophocles would seem in general, not entirely, but in general to fall more on the descriptive side of things. Euripides, on the other hand, would seem less descriptive, less realistic, and more performative. And so what we're going to find when we look at Euripides are behaviors that would seem to violate our sense of psychological realism, but that in fact are performing ideas and performing statements in the ways that sometimes we designate as acting out. Acting out sometimes can be described as a kind of performativity. So, for example, in the play. An earlier play than Bacchae by Euripides called Medea, where Jason has solicited the help of a character named Medea to help him with in the erotica that he's engaged in, and she's helped him, and he brings her back to the home city and then decides that it's really not that good to have this foreign woman to be here. So he really wants to marry someone else rather than Medea. And Medea, of course, is set aside and is not happy about this. And the play at some points becomes almost a panegyric to women about how ill-treated women can be in a relationship. You do everything you can for a man to help him, and then he sets you aside, and now you're expected to be a nice person and to attend the wedding. She's expected to attend the wedding of Jason and his new bride. And so she decides to give them a gift that they'll never forget, which we could genuinely call the poison gift. I think of Hamlet's line, when givers prove unkind. This is she gives the new bride of Jason a gift that will destroy it looks like a pretty dress, but when she puts it on, it will destroy her skin. It's a flesh-eating dress that destroys her skin, and that her father, when he tries to help, puts his hands on her body to stop the flesh. He can't get rid of the poison himself, and so they both are destroyed by virtue of this Median gift. And then and she also in the process in the process ends up killing her children as well, because she doesn't want to see them live in this kind of context. So we're kind of lured into what we could call the good gone wrong. We can understand and sympathize with her plight regarding women in particular, and yet at the point when she then turns this and say, okay, therefore what this leads me to do is to kill my kids, we step back in horror, and then she enters in a chariot and a dragon and the whole thing becomes what we might think of as unrealistic at that point. But of course, as Euripides performing the idea that you've created monstrosity, you pretended that you could use this individual, and then you've actually blown up this the situation into a monstrous situation, which will now destroy you and all of Athens. And so there's the Athenians looking at this city that in which they're watching the play of Euripides and thinking about, in some sense, the history of the city and the monstrosities that have been part of that history. Okay, in this particular play, the Bacchae, we have something that goes even farther than this, what I've been calling in these lectures, the good gone wrong. And again, let me just elaborate that when things break down in sacrificial structures, it's not that something bad comes from the outside or something bad comes from the inside to destroy or attack or annihilate the system. It's the system that has become, for one reason or another, no longer efficacious. And so the attempt to do something good actually compounds the bad and makes the situation worse. It's not the attempt to fight off an external evil or an internal evil. It's precisely the attempt to do something good that becomes itself a new source of the bad. And that's what I've been calling, and I will continue to call in this context, the good gone wrong. And so in this particular play, what makes this even more interesting in some ways, and maybe slightly different from the Medea, is that now Euripides will tell the story of Dionysus and Dionysus's relationship to his origins. Well, why is that interesting? Because the theater is itself the theater of Dionysus and is the origin. So in some sense, it's the theater self-destructing. And after the end, if whoever wins in this play, the play itself is destroyed. If the theater wins, then you have one version of destruction and everyone is destroyed. But if the characters win, you have no theater, and so the situation is destroyed. And so it's a no-win situation that Euripides has set up. The play was regarded as so violent by his colleagues that he had actually to leave the city. He actually had to leave town, and it was never performed during his lifetime, is my understanding. There may be some scholars who have been thinking about the possibility that it was performed here or there, but the general scholarly view is that it was not performed during his lifetime. It was performed after he died, which took place in the last few years of the 400s, the 5th century. And so, and Euripides, when you understand the plot, in some sense, the plot is very simple. Dionysus says, I am Dionysus, my birth. The word Dionysus is either Zeus as a child or the new Zeus. It's not really clear. The Greek could mean either. It could mean little Zeus or Dionysus, new Zeus or little Zeus. And said, my denial, my birth with the god and a human being, a woman, Semele, in this case, immortal, has been denied. And I'm here to prove that this is a real event and that I am the god. And I will bring about the death of King Pentheus, who will try to ignore me. And what happens is that he tries to bring about, Pentheus comes on and says, I'm going to lead an army up and destroy the Dionysus and the followers of Dionysus, and Dionysus destroys him. So there's no irony here. In Oedipus, Oedipus, we one of the things we said about Oedipus is that everything Oedipus does to get away from the myth turns out to fulfill the myth. Everything he does to get away from the oracular stipulations that you will give birth to a monstrous progeny, you will marry your mother, and you will kill your father, which is what the oracle at Delphi said to Oedipus when he was still in Corinth, and he went to Delphi because someone at a banquet had said, you are not your child of your parents, you are a bastard, you were brought in by someone else. And he went to find out, and the oracle said these things, and he said, I left Corinth never to see fulfilled my evil oracles, but in fact leaving Corinth in order to avoid his evil oracles it turns out would bring about those fulfillment of those evil oracles. Now we classically talk about that as Sophoclean irony. There's nothing like that here. Dionysus says what he's going to do. He does it, and then he announces, this is what I did. I mean, it's kind of like they say in the vaudeville theater, tell them what you're going to do it, tell them what you're doing as you're doing it, and then tell them what you did. That's exactly what takes place. It's almost the structure of comedy, except that it's about the destruction of the city. So it's even the impossibility of distinguishing the comic from the tragic here. But I just want to come back for a second to remind you that this distinction between Sophocles and Euripides has really continued throughout our history. I mentioned Miller and Beckett. There are, we could put on one side Eugene O'Neill or Tennessee Williams, and then on the other side we might put Ibsen or Strindberg or Sartre or to some extent Camus or Brecht. And so this has continued throughout our history, that there are really two kinds of plays that on one hand push the performative and lean towards the performative and are not worried about psychological realism. I'm thinking of that moment in Sartre play No Exit, when the characters are in hell and the door opens and they feel like they can't leave. But the idea that they are in hell and there's an open door policy for them, there's the performative right there. At the same time, you have dramas worked out by O'Neill and by Miller and by Tennessee Williams and many others. A lot of American drama tends to be more descriptive, I would say, and a lot of European drama tends not entirely, but tends very often to be more performative. But again, what I'm trying to argue is that the descriptive is simply one more version of the performative, and so it's really the same drama that's at stake. Now, a new idea that I want to just introduce here at this point is that one of the ways in which that I have come to understand the sacrificial and the distinctions between the ways in which remember, I may not remember, but last time I talked about the 4 stages of sacrificial organization that anthropologists, for example, cultural anthropologists, like one stage of the life of René Girard, for example, these 4 stages are absolute difference, differentiation, stage two, difference gone wrong. Stage three, the climactic paroxysmic moment of the substitution of the one for the many in a violent explosion, and stage four, a new order of difference. These four stages have in some ways play out what was known in the 19th century as the difference between the Apollonian and the Dionysiac. And we're going to hear more about that later on, because that might be one of the ways in which we could talk about medical ethics. But Nietzsche, the Friedrich Nietzsche, posited that there's really two kinds of modalities of doing drama, which is one is the Apollonian, which everything is ordered and rational and distinction applies, and the Dionysiac, which is a kind of runaway, what we could call almost mob violence or mob behavior, in which conscious choice is abandoned for appropriation of the behavior of who's closest to you, next to you, and this kind of runaway behavior. Yeah, please go.
I just some idea came to my mind.
Please
regarding descriptive and performative acts. It's and there is just some idea came to my mind. How can we find how things are done with words?
Yes.
Remembering the book by Austin.
Yes.
For example, doctor analyzes, do some analysis, and he says, "You've got cancer."
Yeah.
And so, is that a descriptive form of verbal act, or is that a performative? Initially, we may say that doctor is just describing the fact, that there is some tumor inside you that needs to be eliminated, or maybe there's nothing to do.
Okay.
But actually, probably we may say that I announce you as a cancer patient.
Right.
No, it's a life-changing message. And so, can we just show or demonstrate, to the audience, maybe? So, would you agree with this?
Yeah.
How things are done, with words, and how performative is just sometimes we don't notice.
I mean, one of the things that we're going to talk about in a later lecture is the extent to which the doctor's behavior with regard to assuming his response or her responsibility vis-a-vis the patient or the client depends upon the ways in which the client or patient has presented him or herself, and the kinds of narrativity, the kinds of narratives in which they have presented themselves. And so the answer might depend upon the way in which the doctor learns to read the narrative of the patient. And again, I said last time, and we'll have more to say about it, but it seems to me there are two fundamentally different modalities of reading, just like performative and descriptive, or seem to be two modalities that are different. There's one modality of reading would be representational reading, in which there's what seems to be and what is. Another modality of reading would be what I've called and is part of biblical scripture, the prophetic way of reading, in which you recognize the dramas that are afoot, and you look down the road to the end of those dramas in order to decide whether you want to go to those ends or not. But that has to do with what we call the horizontal back and forth. The representational has to do with looking in deeply or looking superficially, but they are very different. So how the patient would describe her or himself would really color, it seems to me, how we're going to be able to communicate with them as to whether our response be performative or descriptive or in a way that allows to be both. So okay. All right. So what I want to do now is I want to just spend a little bit of time talking about the play. Just so you have the game plan here. We're going to talk for another half hour or 40 or 35 minutes or so, and then we're going to look at the what I think of it as the ultimate scene. In a couple of minutes, about 20 minutes of a scene in the put on in the play, the Bacchae, put on by the Greek theater, National Theater, that is available on the web. You can look at it and you can watch the entire play is available, or you can watch that scene, and we will give you the address, the internet address. But we're going to play a portion of that scene, not the whole scene, but we're going to play it's a 26-minute scene, and we're going to play about 20 minutes of it later on. Okay, I want to start by reminding you, just so, again, this is the scholar in me, I guess, that wants to inform you that these Greek plays tend to be kind of agonistic. That is to say, they're usually formed on the basis of about 4 agons. An agon is a kind of contest between 2 or 3 characters. And so in Oedipus, you remember Tiresias and Oedipus would have an agon, and then Tiresias and Creon would have an agon, and then Oedipus would slip into a discussion between Jocasta and Creon and Oedipus, and then Jocasta and Oedipus. And then the chorus will always have a song. There's an agon, a choral song, an agon, a choral song, a third agon, a choral song, and a fourth agon or episode and a choral song. And those 4 agons and 4 choral songs are all also bracketed by a kind of a prologue, a prologos, which followed by a choral song, and then an exodos, a final exchange and a choral song. It varies a little bit, but that's the fundamental structure. It's the structure of opposition that leads to an opposition between the agon and the chorus. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is turn with you to the play, just so we have a little bit of chance to look at the play. And I want to, just if you're looking at the William Arrowsmith working script translation, list the characters here, and they're very, again, you can follow this on your own. These are the characters are Dionysus, the chorus of the Bacchae, these individuals who will follow the god Bacchus, which is one of the names for Dionysus, to the mountain of the Tiresias, the old prophet, the father Cadmus, whose the city is named in honor of Cadmus, and his son Pentheus will come on, and his daughter Agave will come on. Then her son Pentheus is the grandson of Cadmus. There's an attendant or two, attendant and a messenger, a cattle herder. You're going to see Agave, who's the daughter of Cadmus, and then the mother of Pentheus. Pentheus is going to be the character who is the leader of the community, who opposes this runaway quality in Dionysus. What's happened in the city is that all the women, not the men, but the women have left and gone up to the mountains and are having strange festivals that only men can attend. And Pentheus finds this ridiculous, and he seems to want to bring an army up. The older individuals, Cadmus and Tiresias, say, just allow these women to do what they need to do. Don't fight the god. And so we're gonna look at the opening scene. But I want to spend a little bit of time just looking at Dionysus here and the opening lines of Dionysus, which would be on page 2, the next page. It says, "I am Dionysus." It's going to be exactly what the Dionysus is going to say at the very end. "I am Dionysus. Come back to Thebes, this land where I was born. My mother was Cadmus's daughter, Semele by name, midwife by fire, delivered by the fire, frightening the lightning's blast. And here I stand, a god incognito. I am of Dionysus, disguised as a man, beside the stream of Derse and the waters of Ismenus. There before the palace I see my lightning married mother's grave, and there upon the ruins of her shattered house, the living fire of Zeus still burns." He's Dionysus. Zeus as a young man, living fire of Zeus still smolders on, in deathless witness of Hera's violence and rage against my mother. Hera was the wife of Zeus, and so Zeus had this out of marriage relationship to Semele, which produced Dionysus. So the question is, what status does Dionysus have? Is he really acknowledged as a child of Zeus or not? "But Cadmus wins my praise. He has made the tomb a shrine, made this tomb a shrine, and was I who screened her grave. Far behind me lines the golden river." We're going to skip a lot of this. I just wanted to show you that this is taking place. And then he's comes in, and they said that the next page 3, I'm giving the clause so that we can follow in the script that you have in front of you. They said, again, this is online. You can all get access to this online. They said that Dionysus was no son of Zeus, but Semele had slept beside a man in love and fathered off her shame on Zeus, a fraud. They sneered, contrived by Cadmus. So this is Dionysus trying to prove his birth. He said, I'm the child of a mortal woman, but I'm really the son of a god. Does that remind you of any structure that that we might call Christian? A lot of people, of course, have said that a lot of scholars have argued that in some ways this story is parallel to the Christian story. It's not the same story by any means, and what Jesus does with regard to his status is, of course, very different than what Dionysus does. But the parallels are interesting to look at. And this is also a child. Dionysus is also a child who claims parentage of God and a mortal. I have stung them with, and because of this, I have led these women astray, says, and this is around line 33 or so. I have stung them with frenzy, hounded them from home up to the mountains where they want. These are the Bacchae he's talking about. They're crazed of mind and compelled to wear my orgies livery, every woman in Thebes, but the women only. I drove from home mad, and there they sit, rich and poor alike, even the daughters of Cadmus, beneath the silver firs. Like it or not, this city must learn its lesson. This is, Dionysus is telling us this, and he will then execute the lesson, and then he will say that what I did was give this city a lesson. I mean, there's no irony here. He does what he says he's going to do. Like it or not, this city must learn its lesson. It lacks initiation into my mysteries, that I shall vindicate my mother Semele and stand revealed to mortal eyes as the god she bore to Zeus. As the god that she bore. I have a divine origin. I'm going to show it. Cadmus, the king, has abdicated, leaving his throne power to his grandson Pentheus, who now revolts against divinity. In me, thrusts me from his offerings, forgets my name in his prayers. Therefore, I shall prove to him, I shall show him that every man in Thebes that I am God indeed. And when my worship is established here and all is well, then I shall go my way and be revealed to other men in other lands. But if the men of Thebes attempt to force my Bacchae, these worshipers, these women who are the worshipers, from the mountainside, and Pentheus, of course, will try to do that, by the threat of arms, I shall marshal my maenads and take the field. To these ends I have laid my deity aside and disguised as a man. And he calls to his women, the maenads. Maenads are his followers, the Bacchae. On, my women who worship me, women whom I led out of Asia, where Tmolus leaves his rampart, over Lydia. On, comrades of my progress here. On, comrades of my progress here, come, and with your native Phrygian drum, Rhea's drum and my drum, pound at the palace doors of Pentheus, let the city of Thebes behold you, while I return among Kithaeron's forest glens, where my Bacchae wait and join their whirling dances. I'm reminded of the fact that when Euripides died, some of the stories that were told about his death involved raving dogs. He said it was toward one of the stories that was circulating about the death of Euripides, I think around 405 or so BCE, where that he was torn to death by raving dogs. In other stories, he was torn to death by women who had gone mad, and that women were tearing him apart. Euripides himself. It's almost as if Euripides has become Dionysiac and is writing about an Apollonian situation, which is the language and the distinctions from the Dionysiac. Let me just add a second thought here. The thing that Nietzsche makes clear is that although we think in terms of the Apollonian as the rational and the difference-making, distinction-making on the one hand, and the Dionysiac as the runaway violence on the other, what Nietzsche wants to show us is that they're part and parcel of the same structure. That the Apollonian is really the Dionysiac functioning well, and the Dionysiac is really the Apollonian gone wrong. That the Apollonian gives way to the Dionysiac, which issues in a killing, in a murder, and after that murder, a new order is established. That's the sacrificial ritual that René Girard describes in its 4 stages. So in that way, the 4 stages of sacrifice that we talked about with Oedipus last time, difference gone wrong, climactic or paroxysmic substitution, and new differential order is paralleled by the movement from the Apollonian to the Apollonian gone wrong as a Dionysiac to the murder, in this case of Pentheus, to the new order that's established, which is the kind of new version of a different Apollonian. And so it's important for us to keep these things in mind. In other words, these ideas that we're presenting are not ideas that I made up or that Girard made up or that Nietzsche made up, but these have been ideas that have been circulating about for a couple hundred years, actually, with regard to this play. And apparently, these are ideas that were already circulating in the ancient world. Nietzsche, like Girard and other writers, do not claim to be inventing these ideas, but to be reading these ideas that are already found within the literary works. This has been my own claim too. That what I'm not trying to make interpretations of literature. I'm trying to make clear the interpretations that literature is already itself constructing. I'm not trying to make commentary about literature. I'm trying to uncover the commentary that literature is already making about the rituals and myths by which the cultures surrounding them are operating. Okay, so then we're gonna kind of zoom through here because I want to make sure that we're finished by 5. So then the Bacchae sing their song. There's always, there's Dionysiac gives the prologue, and the Bacchae have their song, Blessed. Just blessed. This is on page 4 in my text. Blessed are those who know the mysteries of God. Blessed is he or she who hallows his or her life in the worship of God. Then so forth. These are the songs. This is the first song. So the Bacchae, whereas in Oedipus you had the city elders, the chorus of Theban elders. Here you have the chorus of Bacchic women. The women have become partisan. Whereas in Oedipus, you remember that the Theban elders were not partisan on the part of either Oedipus or Tiresias until Oedipus appropriates the mythic guilt himself, and then the chorus will say in that play, "You are our paradigma, you are our example." But here, it's very clear that the Bacchic women are already on the side of Dionysus. They are already Dionysiac women. They are already on his side. So these are the women that are leaving and going up on the mountain, and we're going to have an account of their behavior on the mountain. Okay, so then page 6, we get to the first episode, or what in Greek would be the first agon. And Tiresias and Cadmus will talk, and Tiresias says, "Hello there, my friend," and Cadmus says, "Hi, old friend," and Tiresias, how's it going? "I'm doing well. What about you?" "I'm doing well." Here we are, these old men celebrating the god Dionysus. These youngsters don't quite get it. They need to be doing what we do. I'm a man, nothing more, Cadmus says on page 7. Tiresias, "We do not trifle with divinity. We are the heirs of customs and traditions hallowed by age." Bottom of page 7. And then Pentheus comes on, who's of course, the grandson of Cadmus. And Pentheus says, "I happen to be away out of the city, but reports reach me of some strange mischief going on in the town here. Stories of our women leaving home to frisk in mock ecstasies among the thickets on the mountain, dancing in honor of the latest divinity, a certain Dionysus, whoever he may be. In their midst stand bowls brimming with wine, and then one by one the women wander off to hidden nooks where they serve the lusts of men." This is Tiresias. This is Pentheus saying this. They serve the lusts of men. There's no proof that. In fact, it's not going to turn out to be not the case. But this is how Pentheus views what the women are doing. Priestess of Bacchus, they claim they are, but it's really Aphrodite that they adore, the goddess of lust. And in this context, they adore. "I have captured some of them. My jailers have locked them away in safety of our prison. Those who run at large shall be hunted down out of the mountains like the animals that they are. Yes, my own mother, Agave and Ino and Atinoe, the mother of Actaeon, in no time at all I shall have them trapped in iron nets and stop this obscene disorder. That's the Penthean position, and it's very clear, stated from the outset. There's no irony involved here at all. I am also a foreigner to come from. Okay, but then Tiresias suddenly sees Tiresias and Cadmus. This is incredible. Tiresias, the seer, tricked out in a dappled fawnskin, and you, my own grandfather, playing at the Bacchae with a wand. Sir, I shriek from your old age. You are so foolish. Shake off that ivy, grandfather. And Tiresias, aha, this is your doing, Tiresias. I see this is your, he said that Tiresias. I guess this is still Pentheus. This is your doing, Tiresias. So you want still another God revealed to men. And the chorus member says, what blasphemy, stranger, have you no respect? And Tiresias, give a wise man an honest brief. Anyway, they go back and forth, and we understand the nature of their interaction. Again, we're going to move fairly quickly through this just so we can reach the final scene. And Cadmus, my boy, Tiresias advises, well, your home is here with us, with our customs, our traditions, page 10. We're on page 10 now. Your mind is distracted, and what you think is sheer delirium, even if this god, Dionysus, is no god, as you assert. Persuade yourself that it act like he is. The fiction is a noble one, for Semele will seem to be the mother of a god, and this action confers no small distinction on our family. You saw that dreadful death your cousin Actaeon died, when those man-eating hounds said he had raised himself, savaged him. It's the good gone wrong again. You see, the hounds that he raised turn against him. The structures that he has used for his benefit actually turn against him. And tore his body limb from limb, which is exactly what will happen. Now, if there is an irony, that is an irony, because that is exactly what will happen to Pentheus himself. Tore his body limb from limb because he boasted that his prowess in the hunt surpassed the skill of Artemis. Do not let his fate be yours, Cadmus says. Let me wreathe your head with ivory. Pentheus, take your hands off me. Take your hands off me. Go worship your Bacchus. Do not wipe your madness off on me. By God, I'll make him pay, the man who taught you this folly. And of course, that's setting us up for the confrontation with Dionysus. And Tiresias has a similar response. Reckless fool, he says on page 11. You do not know the consequences of your words. And that's what this play is about somewhere, the consequences of denying the Dionysiac, which was apparently a phenomenon in Greece at the end of the 6th century, and there's 5th century, and this is coming about. And so Euripides is writing about this trend, of this interest in this new form of worship of the Dionysiac. Reckless fool, you do not know the consequences of your words. You talk madness. But now this is raving lunacy. Cadmus, let us go and pray for this raving fool and for this city as well. Pray to the god that no awful vengeance strike. That of course won't work, but they leave. And now the chorus will sing their song, Holiness, Queen of Heaven, holiness on golden wing, who hover over the earth. Do you hear what Pentheus says? Do you hear this blasphemy against the Prince of the Blessed, the God of garlands and banquets, Bromius, Semele's son? These blessings he gave, laughter to the flute and the loosing of cares when the shining wine is spilled at the feast of the gods. Sometimes Jesus is portrayed in a manner that makes him look like the god Dionysus in some of the paintings that he's presented. He's not clearly not from a Christian perspective, but some of the this language sounds like some of the representations that have sometimes been made of Jesus. Certainly in cinematic representations, we see Jesus kind of looking like this at times. Okay, they go through their choral songs. So let's go now to the second episode, second Agon, which will be on page 13. An attendant comes, so we're not here empty-handed, but we caught this guy, Dionysus, that you told us to go out and catch. We caught him, here he is. And Pentheus, untie his hands, we have him in our net. He may be quick, but he cannot escape us now. Little, of course, does he know. So you are, stranger, attractive, at least to women, which explains, I think, your presence here in Thebes. Your curls are long. You do not wrestle. You're not a wrestler. You're not a fighter. You're a lover, I guess is what is being said here. And what fair skin you have. You must take care of it. I mean, Euripides is known for the everydayness, the quotidian quality in which he makes reference to the quality of the skincare. I mean, Sophocles doesn't do that. You don't hear Jocasta talking about skincare or Oedipus talking about skincare. But here you have Euripides having Pentheus talking about the skincare of Dionysus, right? Your curls are long. You do not wrestle, I take it. You're not a wrestler. You must take care of your skin. No daylight complexion. No, it seems from the night when you hunt Aphrodite with your beauty. Now then, who are you and from where are you? It is nothing to boast of and easily told, Dionysus says. You have heard, I suppose, Mount Tmolus. I know the place. And then they have this discussion. I come from there. My country is Lydia. Well, who is the god whose worship you have imported? Dionysus, son of Zeus. Again, straightforward, nothing hidden, completely transparent. You have some local Zeus who spawns new gods. He's the same as yours, the Zeus who married Semele. Well, how did you see him? In a dream or face to face? Almost like a face to face. He gave me his rights. You're thinking of that perhaps as irony. No, face to face. It gave me his rights. What form do they take? These mysteries of yours. It's forbidden to tell the uninitiated. Well, tell me the benefits that those who know mysteries may enjoy. I'm forbidden to say. Your answers are designed to make me curious. No. Our mysteries abhor an unbelieving man. You were looking for believers here. You understand why Christians would read this and say, this is kind of sounds similar to some of the things that are going on in our own religious understandings. You saw the God. You say you saw the God. What form did he assume? Whatever form he wished, the choice was his. And they go back and forth. So Pentheus is trying to almost be mocking and joking, and Dionysus is absolutely straight as can be. When do they do it? Mostly by night, better suited to lechery. You can find debauchery by daylight as well. You shall regret these clever answers, and so shall you, Dionysus says, your stupid blasphemies. What a bold Bacchae you are. You wrestle well when it comes to words. What comes to words, maybe not so much in the body, but when it comes to words. Well, tell me, what punishment do you propose? First of all, I shall cut off your curls, your girlish curls. My hair is holy. My curls belong to God. Pentheus shears off Dionysus' curls right there. Second, you will surrender your wand. You take it. It belongs to Dionysus. Last, I shall place you under guard and confine you in the palace. The god himself will set me free, which is true. I mean, this will be of no help to Pentheus. Pentheus, you will be with your women in prison, and then you can call him when you will call on the god for help. Well, he's here now, and he sees what I endure from you. Where is he? I can see him with me. Your blasphemies have made you blind. Pentheus to his attendants sees him. He's mocking me. I give you sober warning, but I say chain him. And while he speaks, the Bacchae begin to drum, and Dionysus says, you do not know the limits of your strength. You do not know what you do. You do not know who you are, Pentheus. Pentheus, I am Pentheus, son of Echion and Agave. Pentheus, you shall repent your name. Off with him, chain him. As for these women, that your accomplices in making trouble, I shall have them sold as slaves. Dionysus, I go, though not to suffer, since that cannot be, but Dionysus, whom you outrage by your ads. Okay, we're moving. I got to move very quickly here, and there's another song. So I want to actually jump to the first cattle herder, which is, there's two major songs, and one is the cattle herder who tells what the women are doing on the mountains with regard to animals. So about that hour when the sun sets, this is on page 22. When the sun sets, lets loose its light to warm the earth. Our grazing herds of cows just begun to climb. I saw 3 companies of dancing women, one led by Atenue, the second by your mother Agave, the third in Eno led. And there they lay in a deep sleep of exhaustion, some resting on boughs of fir, some sleeping where they fell, here and there among the oak trees, but all modestly and soberly not as you think, drunk with wine, or wandering led astray by the music of the flute to hunt their Aphrodite if there was, but your mother heard the lowing of our horned herds, and the springing to her feet gave a great cry to waken them from sleep, and they too, rubbing the bloom of soft sleep from their eyes, rose, and straight, a lovely sight to see. The old women and the young women and the unmarried girls, first they let their hair fall down over their shoulders, let those straps slip, fastened their skins of fawn, that licked their lips. And you understand that this is being performed on the Greek stage, and of course the audience is kind of interested in a Penthean way. It's hard not to be interested in this cattle herder's song, watching what happened. The breasts of these women swollen with milk, new mothers who had left their babies behind at home, nestled gazelles and young wolves in their arms, they suckling them. And then they crowned their hair with leaves and ivy and oak and flowering bryony. One woman struck her thyrsus against a rock. It's kind of like a little staff. Struck her thyrsus against a rock. A fountain of cool water came bubbling up. Another drove her fennel into the ground where it struck the earth untouched. Those who wanted milk scratched at the soil with bare fingers, and white milk came welling up. Pure honey spurted, streaming from their wands. If you had been there and seen wonders for yourself, you would have gone down to your knees and prayed. And then what they're gonna do is they're gonna attack the village later on. I'm gonna skip this because there's again, I want to move on, but this is all readable for yourself. And then we fled. I'm going to go down to around line 745, a little bit before that. And bulls, their raging cry, gathered in their horns, lowered their heads to charge them, fell stumbling to the earth, pulled out by hordes of women, stripped of flesh and skin more. So they're killing the animals. They're stripping them down. And then carried up by their own speed, they flew like birds across the speedy fields, across Aesopus's stream, where most of all the ground is good for harvesting. Like invaders, they swooped on Hesii and on Erythrae, and in the foothills of Kithaeron, everything in sight they pillaged and destroyed. These are the same Bacchae women. They snatched the children from their homes, and when they piled their plunder on their backs, it stayed in place untied. Nothing, neither bronze nor iron, fell to the earth. Flames flickered in their curls and did not burn there. And then the villagers, furious of what the women, these are the Bacchic women who did this, took to arms. And there, sire, was something terrible to see. The men's spears were pointed and sharp, and yet drew no blood, whereas the wands of the women drew women through inflicted wounds. Then the men ran, routed by women. Some god, I say, was with them. The Bacchae then returned to where they had started, by the springs the god had made, and washed their hands, while the snakes licked away the drops of blood that dappled their cheeks. Whoever this god may be, sir, welcome him to Thebes. And of course, this will not be satisfying to Pentheus, who will bring in the god, he said, and they will lock him up, but he simply steps out of the prison, and he's not able to be locked up. And then suddenly a very strange thing happens in the play. We're in about the middle of the play, and suddenly Dionysus looks at Pentheus, page 26, and says, would you like to see the revels on the mountain yourself? Because Pentheus doesn't apparently believe all of this. And Pentheus says, I would give a great sum to see that sight. Where does this psychological realism, what's happened to psychological realism for Pentheus to suddenly say this and simply switch without any preparation whatsoever? It's almost as if Euripides is saying, the man who one moment wants to bring an army against these women, at the next moment actually really wants to be there himself and enjoy the visual sights of it. And so simply he's being, in some sense, from a Euripidean point of view, seduced by the Bacchic disease from a Euripidean point of view. I would pay a great sum to see that. Say, well, why are you so passionately curious? Well, I'm sorry to see them drunk, but for all your sorrow, you'd like very much to see them? Yes, very much. I could crouch beneath the fir trees out of sight. But if you try to hide, they may track you down. Your point is well taken. I will go openly. Shall I lead you there now? The sooner, the sooner. I mean, where did this come from in him? This kind of behavior seems to be absolutely outlandish from the character that we've seen develop, if we're thinking of it in psychological realistic terms. The loss of even moment would be disappointing. Now, first, I can't wait to go. First, however, you must dress yourself as a woman. So not only is he not going to lead an army, but he's going to dress, Dionysus going to dress him up as a woman in a woman's dress. What? You want me, a man, to wear women's dress? Why? But if they knew you were a man, they would kill you instantly. True, but you are an old hand at cunning. I can see that. Dionysus taught me everything that I know. Pentheus, your advice is to the point. I fail to see. What I fail to see is what we do. We shall go inside with you and help you dress. And so they go inside, and he puts on a dress, and he actually helps him, dress as a woman. And then he comes out to the back, and then when he leaves, Dionysus turns to the women and says, "Women, our prey now thrashes in the net that we threw. He shall see the Bacchae and pay the price with his death." And of course, the Bacchae sing. And then I want to go to the moment again, because we're just about near the hour, and I want to go to the moment that the messenger comes on and tells what happened when Pentheus went up there to them. He's led up there. This is at page 34 now. There were 3 of us in all, Pentheus and I, attending my master. That's strange. Attending my master, and that stranger who volunteered his services, leaving us behind. Again, giving us absolute details, so there's no question about what happens. This is not abstract and remote. This is absolutely telling us point by point how this took place. There in the grassy glen we halted, unmoving, silent, without a word, so we might see but not be seen. This is voyeuristic, to see but not being seen. From that vantage point in a hollow we cut from the sheer rock of the cliffs, a place to where the water ran. But Pentheus, unhappy man, could not see quite the companies of women. Stranger, he said, from where I stand, I cannot see the counterfeited maidens. But if I climb that towering fir that overhangs the banks, then I could see them, maybe. And now the stranger worked a miracle, reaching for the stranger's Dionysus, of course, works a miracle, reaching for the highest branches, bent it down to the earth until it was curved the way up. A taut bow bends, or like a rim of a wood, then forced through the hole of a wheel. And like that, he forced the mountain fir down to the ground. No mortal could have done that. And then seated Pentheus on the top. It's kind of like a phallus in a certain way. It's kind of like Pentheus sitting on the top of this tree up there. And then he seated Pentheus highest up with his hands, let the trunk rise up, straightly up, slowly and gently. Let it throw its rider, and the tree rose, towering to heaven, and my master huddled at the top. And now the Maenads saw him more clearly than he saw them. Remember, he's trying to see but not be seen, but actually that attempt makes it worse, and they see him now more firmly. But barely had they seen him when a stranger vanished, and there came a great voice out of heaven. Dionysus must have been crying, "Women, I bring you the man who has mocked you and me at our holy mysteries. Take vengeance upon him." And as he spake, a flash of awful fire bound earth and heaven. The high air hushed, along the forest glen the leaves hung still. You could hear no cry of beasts. The Bacchae heard the voice but missed the words, and leaping up they stared, peering everywhere. Again that voice. And now they knew his cry, the clear command of the god, and breaking loose started like doves through the grove. And when they saw my master piercing in his tree, they climbed the great stone and towered opposite his perch, showered him with stones, and they missed the target. But Pentheus and his perch, barely out of reach of their hands, finally they splintered branches from the oaks with bars of wood, again telling us in infinitely small detail exactly how they did this and how this was doable. They finally splintered branches from the oaks with those bars of wood, tried to lever up the tree, prying up at the roots, but every effort failed. And then Agave cried out, "Maenads, make a circle around the tree, grip it with your hands until we take this climbing beast. He will reveal the secrets of the god. And with that, thousands of hands tore the fir tree from the earth. These people also killed the animals and the children, took the children, right? And then we get this final display of the death of Pentheus. Down, down, down from the high perch of fell Pentheus, tumbling to the ground, on page 36, tumbling to the ground, sobbing and screaming as he fell, for he knew his end was near. His own mother, remember Agave is his mother, his own mother, like a priestess with her victim, fell upon him, but snatching off his wig and snood so that she would recognize his face, he touched her cheek, screaming, "No, no, mother, I am Pentheus, your own son, the child you bore to Echion. Pity me, spare me, mother. I have done a wrong, but do not kill your own son for my offense." In other words, he suddenly discovers the human at this point. And the question is, in her frenzy, in her Dionysiac frenzy, has she been able at this moment to recognize the human? And of course, the answer at this point is no. "But do not kill your son." But she was foaming at the mouth, and her crazed eyes rolling with frenzy. She was mad, stark mad, possessed by Bacchus, ignoring his cries of pity. We're reading from 36, around line 1125 in the William Arrowsmith translation. She seized his, ready for the details of this? She seized, ignoring his cries of pity, she seized his, not just his arm, but his left arm. Just so you know, it's the left arm. That's the one she seized. At the wrist, right? So she seized it, you can tell exactly, right? And then planting her foot upon his chest, she pulled. I mean, you can actually picture this doing, you can see it, right? She pulled, wrenching away the arm at the shoulder, not by her own strength, for the god had put inhuman power in her hands. Ino, meanwhile, on the other side, was scratching off his flesh. Then Itinue, the whole horde of Bacchae swarmed upon him, shouts everywhere, he screaming with what little breath was left, then shrieking in triumph. One tore off an arm, another a foot, still warm in the shoe. I mentioned the detail of the shoe and the temperature of the foot. His ribs were clawed clean of flesh, and every hand was smeared with blood as they played Baal with scraps of Pentheus's body. The pitiful remains lie scattered, one piece among the sharp rocks, others lying lost among the leaves in the depths of the forest. His mother, picking up his head, impaled it on his wand. She seems to think it is some mountain lion's head with which she carries in triumph through the thick of Kithaeron, leaving her sisters at the Maenad dances. She is coming here, gloating over her grisly prize. She calls upon Bacchae, who is her fellow huntsman, comrade of the chase, crowned with victory, but all the victory she carries home is her own grief. Now, before Agave returns, let me leave this scene of sorrow. Humility, a sense of reverence before the sons of heaven, of all the prizes that mortal man might win. These, I say, are wisest. These are best. And that's got to be, of course, Euripides' direct comment on this. I think what we might want to do at this point is have a look at the video in which the next scene occurs. What takes place is, this is the scene in which Agave will say, I arrive. We're gonna just hold it for a second. We're gonna move it back from the remember it's in the middle. We're gonna move it back to, yeah. Can we just hold it for a second? All right. So we're gonna hold this for a second here, and then Agave is going to say, look at the lion's head that I have here, and Cadmus, it's not a lion's head. Look at the lions that I have. Cadmus, it's not a lion's head. Look at, what do you mean it's not a lion's head? Oh my God, it's my son Pentheus. How did he get here? You killed him. I killed, oh my God. And then we get everything. Okay, so
please.
What do we do?
I need to share it once
Okay.
more.
Yeah.
So 1 second, please. I think I shared without without sharing sound. I will share it once more.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it should work.
Okay.
So
Let's start it. We just go hit this.
Yeah.
There's the actress. Here's the actress who's going to put on the mask as you do in a Greek play. So we see the mask, and she will have the mask, and she'll speak from behind the mask. The others will put on the mask as well. He who, with respect to the great mother. All right, now we're going to skip. I'm going to skip a little bit of this. We're going to go to Agave, Lydian. She's coming on. This is Agave with the head of the lion, what she thinks is the lion. You see her in the background. He thinks I'm.
Μακάριος, αξιωθήκαμε τέτοιο μεγάλο έργο. Πέμπτος απροσμέτρητο και αράλυτο, οι πόλεμοι χαλεύτηκαν.
She's beginning to come out of the trance.
Ανά, αλλά γιατί μου λες να το κοιτάξω? Είναι αυτός που ήταν πριν. Τι φαίνεται?
She's beginning to get it. She's beginning to look at it. She's going to scream at him. Holding her head. She seems blind now. Wandering blind. Look where the head is placed. Driven from the city to their lands, to other lands, there submitting to the yoke of slavery, and they shall wear out their wretched lives, captives of war, and enduring much indignity. And then Cadmus tries one last time to say, we implore you, Dionysus, we have done wrong. And Dionysus, it's too late. When there was time, you did not know me. We have learned, but your sentence is too harsh. I'm a god. I was blasphemed by you. Gods should be exempt from human passions. Long ago, my father Zeus ordained these things. And then Agave is fated, Father, we must go. Father, to be banished, to live without you. Poor child, like a white swan warding its weak old father. Why do you clasp those white arms around my neck? Banished, where shall I go? I don't know, my child. Your father can no longer help you. Farewell, Father. Farewell to you, unhappy child. Farewell. But you shall find your faring hard. Lead me, gods, to where my sisters wait, poor sisters of my exile. Let me go where I shall never see Kithaeron more, where that accursed hill may not see me, where I shall find no trace of the Tiresias. And then the chorus sings in its final words, the gods have many shapes, the gods bring many things to their accomplishment. And what was most expected has not been accomplished. But God has found his way for what no man expected. So ends the play. And so ends our discussion. And now we're going to turn to trying to open up this discussion a little bit. Maybe we want to take a breather for a couple seconds here, or what? You tell me what you want to do. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so thank you for your reading. And probably what's important is that Professor provides a rather unusual thing in Lithuania, at least at LSMO. Usually we avoid the reading, and sometimes we see that reading is very important and may give us some clues. So now, I don't want to appear cynical, but just a few recommendations, a few morals that came to my mind. First of all, you should never abuse alcohol consumption, it may end up very poorly. And the second one is that if you are sober, you better not step into a company where everyone's abusing alcohol. So it's like yeah. But here probably what we deal in this situation is that again some opposition, binary opposition, between rationality and irrationality, and usually. If you would think, let's say, even looking from the Derridean perspective, what we see, that one cannot exist without the other. And that means that rationality sometimes may go so mad that, rationality may end up in decisions that become irrational at last. And also irrationality, you cannot avoid that, and it gives us joys. And so is there any way to combine them? What do you think?
Again, you in some ways you're asking, can you combine the Apollonian and the Dionysiac? And I would say no. I would say what you can do is recognize the continuities between them. And when through a careful, what I would identify as prophetic reading, begin to see the dangers that come from the course you're taking, learn to stop, learn to take a Sabbath, as one says in Judaism. Learn to not do. The title of Boston's book is How to Do Things with Words. One of the things that the idea of how to do things suggests that we don't need to do. We can choose to not do. And it seems to me that that's an interesting idea, the idea of not doing. There's an essay by a man who's known in the history of ethics, Michel de Montaigne. And Michel de Montaigne has a series of ethics on virtues. And one of the virtues that he lists is the virtue of not doing. And we tend not to think of not doing as a virtue. We think if it's a virtue, if it's a strength, if it's something that's positive, then it's worth doing. But sometimes when the good goes wrong, we have to think of a way of not doing. And so I would think that we need to learn to follow Nietzsche or to follow Girard's understanding of the sacrificial process and realize that if the good goes wrong, we need to stop. We need to not do. We need to, but that they are connected, and that it will lead us to a new place, some place that's entirely new, if we don't stop. If we reach a point, not only either by external consumption of alcohol or by the kind of mob behavior that gets inculcated when we're around other people who are exhibiting that mob behavior. We tend to borrow their desires and their behavior and to act the way they act and desire the way they desire. And that leads us into great difficulty. And so, I mean, there might be lessons for non-alcoholic behavior, even when there's no alcohol involved. In other words, alcoholic behavior may be simply a name for the kind of behavior that issues whether or not there's alcohol involved, whether our body has been affected by drugs or not. The Dionysiac is a kind of drug. We could think of the Dionysiac as a kind of drug, and behavior that leads us to appropriate without any thought, without any consideration of stopping, as a kind of drugged behavior, even if there is no drug other than the appropriation of the behavior of others. We are that attracted by the behavior of others, which is why it seems to me the notion of Levinas's notion of responsibility is so important, because he says the face, as we tried to suggest 2 weeks ago, is already a response. The face says, "Thou shalt not kill or hurt," or in the case of Levinas and the face, it's "Thou shalt not kill." But the idea of "Thou shalt not" is the capacity to not do, the capacity to stop. We have the capacity. Responsibility, in some way, is our capacity to respond. Responding can mean not doing. doesn't mean choosing among another possibility, but it might mean that. But it can also mean not doing.
Okay.
We want to open to questions.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, please raise a hand, and we will give you a voice, or you can write in the chat if you don't want to talk to us. But everyone's welcome to join our discussion.
Either to make comments or to ask either one of us a question.
Yeah. And now another question that comes to my mind is, aren't we, wasn't that the problem that, the king went to control everything? The king did not like some spontaneity, some improvisation, some play and other things, something that's not in his control. And so he abused his power, or tried to overuse, his power, and this, tendency to rationalize everything and push everything that's unknown, unclear, some spontaneous. So just sticking to plan and avoiding everything, that may happen on the road. That is the main cause of all this huge chaos.
Well, it may in certain circumstances be that, but it could also be his inability to let be, his inability to simply stop and to engage in behavior that he cannot control. And it's almost as if there's a fear of behavior that he cannot control. But Euripides, as I tried to point out, in the middle of the play, suddenly has Pentheus say, I really want to go there and see this. I really want to see it and not be seen. And so it's almost like the other side of Pentheus. There is another side of Pentheus that is willing to relinquish control. And it seems to me we tend to read Pentheus only up into that middle point, and not the point where he dresses as a woman. And we tend to be put off by these gender variations that Pentheus is going through, at least in his dress. And it seems to me that it's a good lesson for us to understand that these are the Dionysiac and the Apollonia are forces that are related to each other, or what we could call the potential for difference, which is what I would call the Apollonian, or the potential for violence, which is the Dionysiac. The Dionysiac, violence. We tend to think of violence as simply something wrong and something that has come from the outside. But violence, the gesture that we call violence, may not always turn out to be violence. When I teach this in the classroom, I say, if I'm teaching in the classroom and I take my fist and I charge at a student with my fist in the student's chest or neck or something, that would be considered violent, absolutely violent, no questions asked. That's violent. But if after school we're playing faculty-student football and I'm on the team, unlikely as that would seem, but I'm on the team and I'm holding the ball and I'm charging past the student who's on the other team, and my fist happens to strike that student even harder than in the classroom, that would not count as violence. That would count as part of the game and simply what goes on. So violence is always a construction upon a certain kind of physicality. It's not a clear-cut thing in itself. Now, in certain instances, it may be a form of death. If violence issues in death, we want to say that it's a form of death. But and that may be the case. But I'm thinking of, for example, of there's not a joke exactly, but there's a story that's told when a woman is stripped of her clothing and she's pregnant, and she's stripped of her clothing and laid on a table, and she's bound on the table, and a man comes in with a knife and stabs her in the stomach. Is that considered violent? Well, the way I've described it, it would seem like it is, but in fact, if she's in a hospital and the knife is in fact a scalpel, we just changed the name, and it's a scalpel, and he's in fact the doctor who's actually trying to save her life by doing a cesarean, then the whole situation is changed and looked at differently. So again, what counts as violence and what counts as operative difference can change from situation to situation. What I'd like to say that difference is violence working well, and that violence is difference gone wrong, in which one cannot achieve what it is that in other circumstances this differential behavior would achieve. And that's my own way of one of my own ways of thinking about it.
Okay. Now, regarding this concept, what comes to my mind is, let's say, COVID-19.
COVID-19.
Yeah, it was like there was a good chance for chaos to appear. People well, it's like if you would follow let's say, for example, some description of what happens in pandemic or epidemia as described by Michel Foucault, it's like celebration. It's like everyone's doing everything they want and so on, and there's no control. Mm-hmm. And then again, we need to fix that situation. We need to avoid that situation. And then probably again, we want that some order was established. And then what we are doing, we are doing using lockdowns and other things. And again, here in this concept, in this place, you may become the victim, of your order or of your strive, to manage the situation. Mm-hmm. And then again, there is a question, how far should we go in managing the situation? And here I liked your notion of not doing sometimes just stepping aside, taking a breath, and those things become very relevant.
Yeah, I think that we have to rely on comes back to what we said before, comes back to reading the situation. We read texts, we listen to voice accounts. We also have to read situations and ask ourselves, where is the situation leading? We have to, I would suggest, read situations. Again, I'll use that word that I've used very often, prophetically, if you like, oracularly. We have to ask, what are the consequences of of doing that? And if we ask the consequences, we may not like the consequences. We think about COVID. I think of instances when people walked into stores in which people didn't want others to be wearing masks, and some people were wearing masks. And I happened to witness one instance in which this was a road stop, and someone walked in with a mask, a trucker maybe, I don't know, and they said, "Take off your mask." He said, "Okay, I have COVID, I'll take it off." And then no, okay. In other words, you recognize that if you think in terms of the consequences, you may have different behavior. If you think where this is leading, can it be taken off? Easily, you just take it off. But do you really want to? It seems to me that what we have to do, again, I like to call it close reading. We have to ask ourselves, where is this going, and what is doing, and should we allow it to do it? Should we allow it? Should we stop it? Should we do it if we haven't already done it, or not do it? Because we always have the choice. I would say the freedom that we have is to not do. I think Sartre talks about this. Jean-Paul Sartre says that our freedoms come in our capacity to negate, and he gets this idea from a French word négation, which means to not do, basically to not do, to negate. It doesn't mean necessarily annuler, to annihilate, turn into nothing, but it means to not do, négation. And it seems to me that's a very, very important understanding of freedom, to our capacity to not do.
Probably the last topic or last association, that comes to my mind is doctor-patient relationships, and maybe this play could be seen as a metaphor, for doctor-patient relationships. When we now usually we are now in in the times when Western medicine is dominating, and here rationality and evidences are crucial, and doctors, they cannot improvise. They need to follow protocols. They need to to do in a correct manner, and there are strict rules and so on. And also doctors need to rationalize, collect symptoms, prioritize them, and based on that do diagnosis and make decision for treatment. But but when we talk about patients, patients come, and what do? They are not providing, just telling their symptoms. They are not doctors. Usually, if I come to a doctor, my story, is full of emotions, full of memories, full of things that maybe are not related directly with my disease, but and so sometimes maybe it might be seen as some chaotic information. It's like noise that should be eliminated, and we should filter all this noise, focus on some facts, then order them, create some order. But isn't that can't we see that as or can't we interpret that as a violent behavior? Like me as doctor, I need to follow, I need to collect evidence, and I need to, as a scientist, I need to apply some decision-making tools, something like that. But the patient, he's sometimes very chaotic and full of memories, associations, and so on. And so, how would you imagine? How could we avoid this sort of Bacchae in the doctor-patient relation?
I mean, I come back to that example of the teacher in the classroom and the teacher in faculty-student football. Is it part of the game? Is it part of the game, or is it an interruption of the game, perhaps by some other game? When young men fight with each other, sometimes they're fighting, sometimes it's bullying, but sometimes it's what young men do in order to relate themselves to each other. And it's identified. There's lots of movies with two men who would fight and then turn out to be the best of friends, and this is how they started their relationship. So the question is, to what extent is it in the game? And if it's not in the game, then we may call it disruptive or aberrant behavior. Is it aberrant, or is it customary part of the drama? So what we have to ask is, can we recognize the dramas that are afoot and name in advance the end of those dramas in order that we can choose to go to those ends or those dramas or not? So if it's violent, if it's disruptive and changes the nature of the game, even if it looks like violence. I mean, two young men wrestling with each other might very well look like violence, and we might think of it as violent behavior until we recognize that they're doing what young puppies do with each other, or cats or animals that are just getting to know each other. They're pawing each other. They're not really taking knives and driving knives into each other. What they're doing is a kind of behavior that has the appearance of violence. So we always have to ask ourselves not so much the intentions of the people in their minds, but what is the intention of the action? What is the nature of the action? We have to. I like the word that has been used in philosophy to describe this, called phenomenology. Phenomenology is this other way of looking at things in which you consider things not by what are the intentions of the people but what are the natures of the actions, and sometimes it's even described as intentionalities. But phenomenology is an analysis of behavior as actions, not as meanings. Not as people asserting things that may or may not mean that something and may or may not come true. Not as about truth, but about behavior. And it seems to me if we do a phenomenology of a phenomenological analysis of the situation, we may be able to determine what behavior is counting as violent, which is to say as disruptive of the normal or a pattern of normal behavior, and what behavior is perfectly within the bounds of some normal behavior. It's exactly what happens when a doctor looks at a patient and sees, this is beginning to happen, and there's the skin that's beginning to tighten or becoming red. We say, well, this is simply part of the recovery process, because the doctor knows where it's going, and will say to the patient, This is part of the recovery. This is not violent behavior on your body's part to disrupt something that we have to apply, get in and do surgery. And, so in other words, we apply these methods all the time by trying to determine whether, by doing what I'm calling now this kind of phenomenology of action, this phenomenology of behavior. Is it disruptive, or is it part of the ongoing game insofar as it's a set of dramas that were not usually recognized as dramas? Agave, in what we've seen, didn't recognize the extent to which her hunting down of her son was part of the drama in which she had become involved to her misfortune. I mean, she had become involved in this behavior described by the cattle herder, in which the women had attacked villages, and nothing bad had come of that except for the animals that were slaughtered and were killed, were pulled limb from limb. But when she used that same drama, and it is a drama, and she didn't take stock of it, that's when it led her to kill her son. So we have to recognize that we're not simply independent observers in a kind of subject of consciousness before objects of knowledge, which is customarily how we think of ourselves. We think of ourselves as subjects of consciousness, of being conscious, in front of objects of knowledge, or subjects of consciousness of objects by subjects of consciousness. We have patterns in front of us that we need to recognize as ongoing destruction, and they're leading to certain results. The question is, do we want those results to happen? Because they will inevitably happen. I mean, if we look at someone dying, they're going to die. It may be that they're in the pattern of dying. If we look at someone who is giving birth, it may be that they're in the pattern of giving birth. And if that's the case, the birth will take place. So we have to recognize when there is a drama that is afoot, and not simply the appearance of a drama. You may have a group of people in a room in which there are some people on one side of the room, some people on the other side of the room. A man with a book open and standing at the end, and some people walking down. It was a woman dressed in white and a man dressed in black, and they're walking down towards this man. And we may think, okay, we're in the marriage drama, but then a camera person yells, "Cut! Go out to lunch, and we'll finish filming the rest of this TV drama in the afternoon." In other words, it's not a marriage at all. What it is a TV show. Or someone would yell, "Fire!" in case we're going to give up any kind of marriage drama and run for your life, and try not to be trampled. But so again, it's a question of understanding the dramas that are. That's why I chose 3 dramas to talk about. We're talking about Oedipus Tuesday. We talked about Oedipus on last Thursday. We talked today about the Bacchae, and this Thursday we're going to talk about Othello. 3 dramas, and then because it's in dramas that things happen, that actions take place. Now sometimes we can read novels that way, and I will try to encourage us to read the short story Dream of a Ridiculous Man in that fashion, as a series of actions. But again, recognizing the dramas that are afoot, naming in advance where those dramas are going, and in order that we can choose to go to those ends or not go.
Okay, thank you. My last question. In your opinion, medicine is a highly rational science. Again, I'm getting back to this opposition between rationality and spontaneity, or some irrationality. What do you think? Is there any space for Dionysian or Bacchae or something like that in medical sphere, doctors? Should that be like sterilized, removed? And
well, it depends on what you mean. I mean, for example, we know that there are medical uses of marijuana, and marijuana, like other drugs, causes an involuntary effect upon your body. So things happen. Is that used? Yeah, it is. So when you say it's rational, yeah, it's rational, but we're rationally choosing to be unrational. When I teach writing, students, I say, writing is controlled, uncontrolled. And it seems to me medicine, rather than medicine being thought of, in my mind, as rational, I would say it's rational irrationality at times. It's a rational setting up of the possibility of being irrational. I mean, we do this all the time. We in different therapies when when people have a limb cut off, they often go into an oxygen setting in order to have certain improvements of their cells. Well, we're allowing processes to take place on their own. We're not saying, okay, this cell do this and this cell do this. We're not controlled. It's controlled, uncontrolled, but it's controlled, uncontrolled. And we usually the result is what we expect. It may not always be. And so I would say that medicine is already it's a rational use of irrationality. Yeah,
that's a great idea. Now I remembered this month there will be a webinar at the University of Helsinki. I got just a letter with an announcement.
Yeah.
And a very interesting discussion or topic is that usually it's about animal care, but humanity tries to get rid of parasites. Parasites are not useful both to animals and humans, and so they're harmful. But the problem is that if we get rid of all parasites, there might be problems with the ecosystem.
Right.
And this way, like we want to create order, by removing chaos, but this way probably we are just multiplying chaos and causing additional problems.
Right.
Isn't that similar?
I think completely. Yeah. The rational sense of control is what drives Pentheus to lose all control entirely.
So probably we may finish with this idea.
So do we not have any? We have no questions. No one wants to ask.
It seems there are no. You have last minute chance to give a question.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes here. We can or 4 minutes.
Yeah.
We can do some talk. This is your opportunity to do that. There's a lot of people with a lot of names, and someone may have something they want to say.
Seems no questions. So thank you, Professor.
Thank you
for your talk. So this is the third talk. We invite you to join future talks. So we have next Thursday and also next Tuesday and the second next Thursday. So 3 talks left. So you're welcome to join. And thank you for joining this seminar, this lecture. So bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.